Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Overwatch Weekly. Got quite a few things to cover this week. Relatively busy week in news, so we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to start by talking about a PTR patch that went live on August 22nd. Now, this PTR patch features one major new feature, which is shared install. And what that does is it makes it so that the PTR and live Overwatch PC clients can now share storage when installed to the same file path on disk. Now this reduces the disk space required to install and update multiple clients, and as a result, the PTR client should now require only about 1.2 gigabytes of additional storage as opposed to the 17 that it used to. So it's a huge change. So if you have the PTR installed, uninstall it and then reinstall it, and it's only going to be a gigabyte of storage that's going to take up. Now there are also some hero updates. Bastion's self-repair no longer consumes resources while Bastion is at full health, and Bastion can now correctly initiate 0.25 seconds of recovery time when canceling self-repair with weapon fire. So Bastion got a bit of a buff, but not to his damage or anything, just to his self-heal, which is nice, because it makes his self-heal a little bit better now. Symmetra's primary fire beam width was lowered from 0.3 meters to 0.15, and the beam DPS per level lowered from 65, 130, 195 to 60, 120, 180. So a good old damage nerf there for Symmetra, who was one of the best heroes in the game at the moment. Zarya's primary fire beam width no longer scales with energy from 0.1 to 0.2, and is now always 0.15. And the max beam DPS lowered from 190 to 170, so another nerf there, this one for Zarya. The two beam characters. Interesting. Sigma had some changes. Hypersphere's explosion damage reduced from 35 to 30. Experimental Barrier added an option toggle for deploying Sigma's experimental barrier. So if you want, you can just click it and it'll go until you click again, or you can continue to hold, whichever one you prefer. Accretion's explosion damage was increased from 50 to 60. And Gravitic Flux's intro cast time was increased from 0.4 seconds to 0.6 seconds. There are also some workshop changes. I don't normally talk about workshop changes, but do want to highlight one of them, which is you can now create dummy bots, which is a full player that has no human or AI controlling it. Using other workshop actions, dummy bots can move, aim, press buttons, and do most things that human players can do. So now you have more options in the workshop to make more PvE type things, like your own type of Junkenstein's Revenge or something like that. So that's something really cool that I like that they've done. So yes, there are now dummy bots. That will be a very cool thing to see. Of course, they're going to keep improving on the actual software for those dummy bots, and the actual dummy bots will get better and better as we go forward. But that is where we are with the PTR patch notes. There's obviously some more stuff there, some more workshop changes, some more bug fixes, all that kind of stuff. So if you want to see that, link as always is in the description down below. There was also a live patch note, which is interesting, because we don't normally get PTR and live patch notes this close together, but this one is interesting, and it makes sense. The shared install is obviously, because it works on the PTR, it's going to work on live as well. So you also now have shared install on live, exact same things that you have in the PTR. Obviously, you're not going to have a shared install on PS4 or Xbox One, because there is no PTR on those. But what does get added to PS4 and Xbox One, and of course PC, is hotfixing. And what this does is it allows it so that the Overwatch client on all platforms can now automatically receive minor updates, or hotfixes, without needing to be restarted. And this requires only online connectivity, access to disk, and sufficient disk space. And in the event that a hotfix can't be received, you may encounter a message that you can resolve by looking at something on the post itself. You know, if you have a message that says unable to install disk or patch, or insufficient disk space, or insufficient write permissions, unable to download data, there's a bunch of different links that you can follow to help you figure out how to then install these things to make sure you have the right storage and whatnot. So that's it for patch notes for this week. There were no real, meat to this live server one, some patches or some bug fixes as well, but for the most part, it was just those two quality of life changes. Now, we get to one of the biggest stories from this week. We have from the Blizzard forums, from Scott Mercer, we have the role queue update. Now, this is a very, 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 very long post. I will not be reading the whole thing here because we would be here forever. But I will read some of the things that are somewhat important. So, I'll read the opening stuff, and then I'll kind of go through and I'll read some other bits here and there. But it opens up by saying we're now over halfway into the role queue beta season, and the introduction of role queue into quick play in season 18 are just around the corner on September 1st. We wanted to take the opportunity to address feedback we've been reading on our forums and other social media, as well as provide some insights into how these systems work. The primary goal of this feature has always been to increase the quality of Overwatch matches, and it's been great to see so much positive feedback about match quality in a role queue world. Creating high-quality online multiplayer games of Overwatch has multiple components, and role queue has helped us to do this in several important ways. Later they say we also believe that games of Overwatch are better when both teams have balanced team compositions. This has been the loudest, most noticeable positive feedback from everyone. Players can no longer get matched into a game where no one wants to play a tank. You can also feel better queuing as a tank, knowing that there will be 2 healers to keep you alive. And with both teams guaranteed to have 2 tank, 2 healer, and 2 damage roles, the games immediately feel fairer and more winnable. Players are more engaged, perform better, and ultimately have more fun when the games are balanced. Preventing discussions about who plays what role from overheating into arguments or worse is also having an immediate impact on players' enjoyment of the game. Overwatch is at its best when teammates are working together in a positive fashion. Negative communication not only feels bad, it makes you play worse. I can guarantee you that it has not fixed negative communication. Instead of it being like, bro, we need someone to switch over to tank, or we need someone to switch over to support, it's DPS, you guys are doing awful. Support, you guys suck. Tanks, you guys aren't doing anything. So there's still negative communication, it's just slightly different now. But then they had some answers to some questions. Why are queue times for damage role players so high? They said we're monitoring the data very closely, and I can share some information here. Across all skill ranks, we do see higher queue times for players who specifically queue for damage only. Most damage players usually see 3 to 6 minute queues unless they're in the Masters or Grandmaster skill tiers, but then it's a much higher queue time. Players with very high SRs will always see higher queue times because there's fewer players of similar skill to match against them. But we've seen reports and have data showing some players are waiting 20 to 30 minutes. Even that's generous, there are some players who are waiting over an hour. We're investigating this and are already working on some matchmaker adjustments or future updates to help address the issue. If you can find a friend who plays tank or support, queuing together as a damage tank or damage support duo drastically reduces the queue times you'll face. So there's a little information for you. Why are damage role players getting unfairly blamed for losses? Well, it's pretty obvious. It just happens. And it's, you can't really blame it on the team composition because all the team compositions are going to be 2-2-2. They're like, oh, no one's doing enough damage and whatnot. So that's all they're saying is, it's a team game and everyone should be contributing to making sure the other team dies. It's not just the DPS player's job, which is true. Then there's a question about why did I complete placements and receive an SR that was too high or low? And essentially all he said is, if you've never really played a certain role, like support or tank, for example, it tries to put you into a guess of where you might be, and maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but as you play, it'll adjust it more until it can kind of figure out where you are exactly. And then they had a whole kind of long conclusion to this whole thing. So, like I said, if you want to read the full post, it is in the description. It is a long, long, long post. But there is something that is more interesting to this post. The biggest part of this post is something that I have not read yet. And it is this from Scott Mercer as well. Wyoming Mist, who is a MVP on the Blizzard forums, asked, Scott, can you 100% clarify if the accumulated matchmaking rating from Role Queue Beta will be or will not be passed over to Season 18? I've been going off of the news blog post that all stats from the beta will not count, but the community is still concerned about this aspect. Now, what specifically this says, I will read it to you just so we can have some very clear understanding of what it says. So what it says here on the old post is that beta season stats will only be available for a limited time and will not count toward a player's permanent competitive season stats. Now, this was interpreted by some people to mean that, you know, the actual data, the actual way you place, isn't going to carry over at all. It's going to go away, and it's not going to have any impact on your later seasons. Now here, Scott Mercer 100% clarifies this and says, the results of your matches in the Roll Q beta are not being thrown out and will be used by the matchmaking systems to help determine your skill in Season 18. What the blog post is trying to explain is that the Roll Q beta season's stats in your player profile will only be available for a limited time, and they will not be added to your career competitive totals that you can see when you choose all competitive seasons in your career stats. Now this, of course, caused some anger because some people were saying, well, I was under the impression that this season wouldn't affect my SR going forward at all, so I haven't been playing my best heroes, or I haven't been playing my best on purpose because I've been trying to see what, you know, kind of my limits, see if I can learn this hero and improve as this hero and all this other stuff, and now I'm finding out that this is a problem. Now for me personally, it's not an issue. I tried every match that I played. I don't like to be someone who's like purposely not playing my best heroes. To me, it was competitive through and through. It was a competitive season at the end of the day. Just because it was a beta season doesn't mean that it was a competitive season to not try in. But I do understand why there are some people who didn't interpret it that way because of what was seen and said in the past. I think even Jeff Kaplan may have come out and said that it won't affect your SR, which if he did, that was just not true, obviously. But it's going to be interesting to see how this whole situation kind of unfolds and see if people's SRs end up being really, really low and like if it's a problem for people. But we'll see what happens. The next story is that this weekend, actually Friday, we have the start of the Overwatch League playoffs, and that begins with the play-in tournament. Now, these matches, of course, will all be taking place in the Blizzard Arena in Burbank, California. But we have 6 teams that are going to be fighting for 2 spots in the overall season playoffs. And those teams are the number 7 seed London Spitfire, the number 8 seed Seoul Dynasty, the number 9 seed Guangzhou Charge, the number 10 seed Philadelphia Fusion, the number 11 seed Shanghai Dragons, and the number 12 seed Chengdu Hunters. So, on Friday, August 30th at 6 p.m. Pacific, we will see the Guangzhou Charge take on the Chengdu Hunters. And then Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific, which is pretty late if you're not in Pacific, you will have the Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Shanghai Dragons. The lowest seeding winner of that, so that could be Philadelphia, Shanghai, or Chengdu, would go on to face the London Spitfire, while the highest remaining seed would be either the Guangzhou Charge, Philadelphia Fusion, or Shanghai Dragons, depending on who wins between these matches, will go to face the Seoul Dynasty. I will have my picks and my predictions for the play-in tournament going up on Friday, before the matches, obviously, so you can expect those if you want to know my opinions and who I think will ultimately be our 2 playoff teams from the play-in tournament. That will be something that you'll be able to see here on Friday. The map pool for the overall playoffs, so play-in and the playoffs, will be for Control, Lijiang Tower, Busan, and Ilios. For Assault, it'll be Hanamura, Horizon Lunar Colony, and Anubis. For Hybrid, it'll be Kings Row, Eichenwald, and Numbani. And for Escort, it'll be Gibraltar, Rialto, and Dorado. So those are your maps for the playoffs. And of course, the patch that it will be playing on is the current patch on Live, the Sigma patch. Finally, a very interesting story to talk about here, which is that there's a bit of a leak involving Overwatch on the Nintendo Switch. And this leak comes from Amazon, and the leak was reported, at least what I saw, by Wario64 over on Twitter. So I'll have a link to the tweet in the description down below. I also have a link to a video by GameXplain, someone who I never thought I'd link to ever for an Overwatch video, on this channel, but they made a video as well talking about it. Just kind of a video if you want to see it instead of reading the tweets, but that is linked in the description down below. But this tweet from Warrior64 says Overwatch themed Nintendo Switch case by Power A listed on Amazon with a link to the Amazon page, and it is, quote, officially licensed by Nintendo and Blizzard Entertainment. And then he replied to that tweet saying now it's delisted very quickly. The tweet is not, or the Amazon listing is no longer viewable. And then he followed up with a nice picture of some more things on the case, which you should be seeing the pictures for this case now. Now what's interesting about this is that there are rumors in the Nintendo world. I am a huge Nintendo fan, if you are not aware, so this is some stuff that I am knowledgeable about somewhat, but there are rumors that we will be getting a Nintendo Direct at some point in September. Nintendo Direct is just where they have their kind of news releases, and it's where we get kind of announcements. So usually you're not going to see like individual kind of announcements and whatnot from Nintendo. Typically their announcements are done through Nintendo Directs. There's a Nintendo Direct every E3. There's a Nintendo Direct usually in September. There's one usually in January. So that's kind of when they come around. So they kind of come around the same time every year. So there's rumors that there will be one again in September. And this is something we could maybe expect to see announced in September. There's also people who are, saying, well, maybe an Overwatch hero will make it into Smash Brothers. And to that, I say, let's pump the brakes a little bit. Let's not jump to too many wild conclusions about this whole situation. But keep in mind as well, it's also a rumor. But the fact that it was put up and then quickly removed makes me think that it is, in fact, a real thing. So we'll see what happens in September, and if not in September, we'll see what happens at BlizzCon, if any of this stuff gets announced. But until then, we are going to just wait and see. So that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. But I'm going to get out of here, so until next time, have a good day, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.